We are live. Welcome back to State of the Network, put on by Deep in State. Super excited to have Joey from Helium Foundation on. Joey, what's shaking,
Hey,
dog?
good morning. Happy
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Today is, I think there's also a governance call that was scheduled at the same time. So I think I got to do a better job of scheduling these things in Discord server so that people see that they're up there. But
Yeah,
what
but
else?
get the slot in there. I think they saw an opening and took it.
I need to crush out all the openings. Today is a big radio day, 10-4 day, October 4th.
Oh, look at
Actually, I
that.
don't know if it's a big
Yeah.
radio day, but I saw that and couldn't resist. We got some news. What's you want to start with Line Loop? Lime Loop?
Yeah, well, this was a cool one that popped up sort of the tail end of last week.
Okay.
And so if you sort of go way back in your head, we did some press around running devices on the Helium network in conjunction with the Amazon Sidewalk
Okay.
network, which is their sort of similar approach to crowdsourcing coverage.
Hmm.
Um, and we did that with the company Oxit, and it kind of got a lot of hits because it's this new way to think about connecting devices.
Okay.
Um, and then fast forward to last week, and we're still sort of chatting with the Limeloop team. We're not sure if this came from the Oxit stuff, but it is very much the similar model. They are building these package trackers that can be used for recyclable packaging and all of that that use helium and sidewalk. Um, and so it's this really awesome, uh, you know, we can only do so much like beating the drum of saying like, hey, this is a really great opportunity, this is a really great use case. But it takes companies putting in the time, energy, effort to build these things. And sure enough, that's what Limeloop is doing. Um, and so, yeah, we've chatted a little bit with their team, but we're excited to sort of learn more on what they're up to, get some case studies together, kind of show this off to sort of a more broader set of people who might be building things like this.
Badass.
Yeah,
Dang. So I was thinking. I'm glad it's not the original Lime news, which was not the,
yep.
the best news. But fucking Lime Loop
Maybe it'll
already.
help erase some of that. Like, I mean, like that. I wish. Yeah, I got things to say on that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. So it's cool because I think what's happening, Max and I have talked about this a lot, is what deep in projects are for is exploring new business use cases. And like the reason to do deep in is it's kind of the business model of last resort, but it may be the only model that fits. And in Helium's case, we're talking just about the LoRaWAN. Well, I guess we could be talking about mobile as well. Is no one knew what would happen if you had a global LoRaWAN network because one didn't exist. Right?
Hmm.
There's like a bunch of disparate pockets of coverage, but nothing where it was the more or less ubiquitous coverage in cities and towns and populated areas. Now, at least in the northern hemisphere, mostly.
I mean, yeah, most big cities, even in Asia and places, yeah, have pretty good coverage.
Yeah. So now it's like a race. Okay, it was able, Helium was able to build the thing. What what do we do with it? And this is
Totally.
like the thing where it's like, okay, maybe it's the Lime Loop, maybe it's the next thing, maybe it's the who's it, Carrie at Baxis that was doing that
Hmm.
stuff with monitoring whiskey barrels. Like, there's all kinds of opportunities, options, things to explore. And really, it's how long does the network last, and does it last until this intersection happens where it's like, oh, that's the perfect use case. And it seems like it's going to last that long. But in the meantime, it seems like there's just going to be a bunch of little news bubbles like this where it's like, hey, check this out. This might be the next thing. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what happens. And we'll eventually, I think there's enough runway to find it. That's just my guess from the outside.
Totally. And it actually reminded me, you might pull Shane's quote up here,
Oh, yeah,
that we wasn't even on our agenda to talk about demo.
that's right.
Um, but yeah, so I've actually been chatting with the demo team about as long as I've been chatting with the Hive Mapper team on building LoRaWAN stuff. So that's been probably like 2+ years now. Um,
Jeez, yeah.
it's as the story, like it takes time to build hardware, and we're starting to see this stuff roll out. And so this is some of these companies coming through on that promise. But yeah, Demo wanted to build a lower cost device for their network, and Helium. sort of fit a really important niche there. Those other
Yep.
devices, the AutoPi that they run, have a SIM in there for cellular coverage, and that costs them sort of recurring funds and has all of the overhead of being a big box underneath your dash, right?
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so by building something on a Helium, or sorry, on a LoRaWAN chip rather, and leveraging the Helium network, they're able to bring that price down to something closer to $100, which is frankly crazy. And sort of what Shane's asking about here is, how much data are they going to sort of pump through? It really is going to depend on how much you drive. And so, yeah, the $15 a year might be very generous unless you just nonstop go. Maybe you're a, an Uber driver or something. You're going to be doing a lot of driving.
Okay.
Um, but the way they've got those devices configured is very regular uplinks. So it is a sizable amount of traffic moving through those devices. So we'll be really excited to see those come online and see how the demo team is able to like act on that data that's coming off those devices and all of that. But it's been really fun working with that team to sort of help them scope hardware and sort of think about connectivity and
Yeah.
providers and all that other fun stuff. So
Those are sharp
yeah.
guys. It's good to just to be around them. Like they're
Oh yeah, I could chat with Yev all day long. He's like,
yeah, not
yeah.
nonstop with any of them. It's just like, you're a lot smarter than me. I got to be careful.
Hmm? Danger of the space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's a bunch of bright people out there, so it's pretty cool. Makes us all hopefully up our game.
totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that's Limeloop. That's Demo. We've got this giant thing of unbilled device joins that
Yeah.
went down this week. There's an announcement. I think there's a bunch of not talk, but back channel talk before that, and then the announcement happened, and then there was a bunch of, hey, why the fuck did you do this? And walk us through it. What happened?
Yeah. Well, so we recognize so let's go all the way back to the Helium L1 when hotspots interfaced with this on-chain entity of a router to manage the LNS piece. And that architecture, having a blockchain piece sitting adjacent to the LoRaWAN network server, the LNS, um, meant that it could do very neat blockchain things and interface with hotspots in a very particular way. One of those things was that when a hotspot heard a data message, it would send an offer to that router sitting next to the LNS and say, like, hey, I've got data. Do you want it? And then the LNS slash router could make that decision and say, yes, please send it over to me. And so it gave the LNS control over what things it bought from the network in a very one-to-one way, right? And so that was your join requests, that was your uplinks, and every little bit of data that was coming through a hotspot. Um, Moving forward to today, we operate all of our network through Helium Packet Router, and that effectively sits as that blockchain piece in a way. It's much more designed to be scalable and streamlined and handle a lot more transfer.
It's bigger than
But
12 Raspberry Pis. Yeah. Or whatever the
it's a little bit.
consensus
It's
group was.
actually it's at least several regions, multiple instances. It's a whole system.
It's a monster. Yeah.
Um, and so the hotspot's going to send data to Helium Packet Router. Helium Packet Router has a certain amount of routing capability in it, and then it's going to send that data off to the LoRaWAN network server. And so what you'll notice there is that bid offer piece all the way to the LNS is not there anymore. And that's good because it was a slow mechanism and it created opportunity for data to get dropped. So that all of those pains go away when you move to a system like this. However, the join request is not a device that the LNS has had any sort of compute around and hasn't been able to generate session keys or acknowledge that device as being accepted data transfer for that server. And so the challenge exists that you could effectively spam join requests to a LoRaWAN network server, and then it would be responsible for paying the one data credit for each response that it was being heard for, um, even though it never really asked for them in the first place. And
All right,
this
let me
could be
make
sort
sure I
of like
understand that because you're getting into geek land, and I want to make sure
I'm way deep. Yep.
that I can follow you. So, I take a sensor, a weather station, a moisture sensor, whatever, and it goes through this join request piece where it sends out over radio, like, "Hey, I want to join the network." Sends out this packet
Yep.
of data, and that packet of data used to be received and basically inspected and said, like, "Yeah, we'll buy this or we won't." And now that packet data goes through, and instead of being inspected for purchase or no purchase, it's just routed through to an LNS, which has to purchase it. Is that a way to think of it, or am I not getting that right?
Basically, so like HPR is going to send it to the LNS and it's going to record it as a build event. Um, and
Okay, so
yeah,
Helium Packet Router will record it as something that, like, hey, basically it's like a business working on credit. Is like, yeah, I sent you this thing. Now you owe me money.
yep,
Okay,
yep.
cool.
Yeah, this is like uh, mailman drops something off at your door and asks for a bill, and you have to pay it no matter what kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, bad analogy, but
No, I've,
yeah,
I've gotten fucked like that by UPS when I accepted a package from overseas, and there's like a $600 customs thing to it, and
and
it's
it was a
it's
brick.
not quite the
Like,
same, but
yeah,
it's just like, yeah, okay, cool.
totally.
So what's the problem? Just pay
Yeah.
pay for the packages, right?
So the problem, right? So you as a normal network user, you're sending those join requests from a physical device, and it has every intent to join that LoRaWAN network server that it's, joining.
Mm-hmm.
The issue becomes like, well, Nick starts getting a little clever and he emulates that join request and he just starts spamming them through a bunch of data only hotspots, and it's all sort of throwaway stuff. And now effectively what you've created is an ability to drain data credits from the pool for that LNS. You're stealing data credits from them,
Okay.
and that's not a scenario we want to see on the Helium network. That should never be a risk.
Yep.
um, and so that basically this whole proposal, we did a whole bunch of conversations with roaming partners, with LNS operators, with the architecture team, trying to figure out like what is the best way to move forward here. And the simplest approach here is just don't bill for those events. They are very infrequent events on the network. Um, the lower you can make that bar for a device to join the network, the easier it is to start thinking about collecting all of the hotspots that have heard that event. And so that's basically the change that we made on the network. And now we're working through what we want to see from the community is like a confirmation that that was the right decision to make, or if there's an alternate, like then go change that. And the reason for taking that approach is otherwise you've exposed a vulnerability to the general public, and then you say like, well, what do you want us to do about it? Um,
Right.
so
So
there was a
base
disclosure path.
it went from we talk about that part in a second, which I think is totally fine. So it went from postman delivers a package on my porch and I get billed for it to postman delivers a package on my porch, I don't get billed for the package being delivered.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotta keep this shit
And
simple for me, Joey.
no matter how many times he knocks, it's you you can answer, you cannot answer. That it's you're not getting charged for it.
Interesting. So there an aspect like once I answer, open the door, and bring the package in, then I get charged for it, or
Well, and I
there's
think that's an opportunity here. So we can't necessarily know whether the LNS really wanted. Well, we can actually. We could know whether the LNS wanted that message. It's a little
okay.
bit more work to sort of say like, oh, did it send the join accept, and now do we like treat that as a joined device, and the LNS truly wanted it. A simpler approach might be to start thinking about do we start billing for the join accept itself instead of the join request from the
Okay.
device,
Yep.
because there's a handshake process there, um, and that's really I think where we could start seeing the community start driving some change on data credit pricing effectively, on uh, how those are handled. There is of course a question of like, is it worth the time because they are infrequent
Mm.
messages, And it may just very well be the case to say, like, don't worry about it. Joins are not the part of running a device that you should really be thinking about. Um, and,
Okay.
focus on standard uplinks and downlinks and stuff. But,
And basically, this is just something that was exploited by some scammy fucker that's like, oh yeah, I'll just steal some money.
fortunately, we recognized it pretty early and we were able to start pulling together this plan before we really saw many exploits. I think there were maybe a couple of upticks of joins that we saw happening, and that
Okay.
sort of helped push this, the
Yep.
to launch it. And we're keeping a really close eye on that. But yeah, we were able to like have like a actually a head start here in this case.
Cool. Super cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that my LNS gets attacked all the time. People are like, oh, it's permissionless. Great, I'll jump on and see what kind of damage I can do. It's like, it's just the cost of doing business, and it is sometimes hard to make sure that I pay that cost and be like, God damn it, this is not doing me a bunch of good. But I think it's pretty interesting in the general public's eye to be able to have something that you can jump on and fuck around with. And now I think there's a couple folks doing the same thing. So
Yeah, hopefully there's more. I
yeah,
want to
hopefully
see
there's way more.
all of them grow. There, you know, it should be a business that ticks up. If your usage is ticking down, then something is wrong. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
it's interesting. I think we talked 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was like, dude, I think I'm going to close this down. And then people started buying more data credits, and I guess they went through their 1 month or 2 month cycle. And it's like, oh, maybe there's enough money in it to keep it going. So yeah,
yeah. Well, and I watched Dune to see the network usage on your LNS, and it seems to be ticking up a little bit. So yeah,
yeah.
it's
I
good.
had a guy write in. Oh, I forget this was last week, and he wanted some help with stuff, and went to the YouTubes and looked at all the Medio Scientific videos. But he's like, oh yeah, I just brought over 80 devices from the what is it, VIP console that's shutting down. I was like, oh,
Oh,
badass.
cool, great.
I'm glad I
Yeah.
could be of help.
Yeah, I actually just last night was looking at your pull request to pull the foundation console thing off of the documentation.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
still sitting there. I'm still
yeah.
thinking through it, but yeah.
You guys decide what you want to do with it. Or is it? This must be Rollinson, Jr. I think. All right. By design, as Jordan wants to prevent. I think he says he makes the correction DDoS later. Cool. So that was the
Yeah.
big kerfluffle, and I think it was not so much the kerfluffle was not so much about the attack or the technical solution. It was about how the foundation solved it by kind of solving it first and then announcing that the the steps they'd taken. And people,
Hmm.
I think at least a couple people were like, "That's bullshit. We should be consulted first." But I think the point that was made is the one you just made is like, "Hey, we're going to stop this first, and then we'll see if the community is not happy with it." Versus telling these shit eaters that like, "Hey, we're cutting on to you. You might as well get as much as you can before we shut it down." That doesn't seem
Yeah,
like
it
the
would
answer.
really would have been the irresponsible thing to just blast it out there before the fix was ready. We did actually reach out to just a number of people, like in the IoT working group and things like that, and said like, "Hey, this is an issue. I think we need to move forward with this," and sort of got some rough consensus out of like a cross section of the community. Obviously, that's not going to be entirely representative of everybody, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, we tried to really think through how to approach this. Another approach that we had in mind was put up the vote and then watch to see if anyone starts gaming it. And if they do, then we would go make the change, assuming that the vote was going in favor.
Yep.
But then we actually realized you could do a governance attack and completely. Uh, so it's just like we
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
to
This is
yeah,
it's a
be smart
great.
about it.
No, it's a great segue into some of the work certainly Max and I've been doing with governance for a lot of these projects. And maybe this is the one of the opening shots in this conversation with the deepen community at large is there's this real big desire for all these projects to have what's called direct democracy: one person, one vote, one miner, one vote, one token, one vote, whatever it is,
Mhm.
where everybody has a direct vote, and that doesn't work. Right, for these reasons is that right now, if you're willing to spend, I forget what the amount is, it's not much. Let's call it $10,000. So more than I've got sitting in a bank account right now, to throw at this thing as like a fun thing, but certainly not so much that it'll stop anyone. If you got $10,000, you can sway a vote on helium.
Hmm.
And that is because of the way this thing is set up right now. So these governance systems have to be set up in a different way. And the one thing that's clear is, here's at least one way not to do it, but the way to do it is going to vary depending on the project. And the classic consulting answer, it depends.
Yep. No,
What kind of project, what's going to happen?
it's exactly the sort of thing that you have to play that sort of devil's advocate game with. It's like, what if, what if, what if? And that's how you tear these things apart. And it tends to be the case that all those ifs will happen at some point in the life cycle. Um, and
Yeah,
there's people that sit there thinking about how to play these things, and we see flash loan attacks and all of that happens sort of throughout the space. Um,
yeah,
and we, take some solace in the Helium governance model that tokens get staked for a period of time, and that's, correlated to your vote power. But it doesn't mean that you couldn't go just buy a whole bunch of tokens, stake them forever, and then extract that value through gaming joins or something else like that, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, especially, I mean, as you said, especially if Helium Foundation is like, cool, we'll put this up for a vote. Everyone's clearly going to vote the right way. It's going to be good. And then you get some jackwagon who's got an extra 10 grand. They're like, nope, now I own the network. Thanks for coming.
Yep,
So,
exactly. So yeah, you've completely illustrated why we had to take that approach in this case. But yeah,
yeah.
it's
And Max and I talk about this all the time on the back end, this governance thing. 'Cause I think one of the things that we see, and we've been talking to some folks, really, say like, let's see what's a nice way to say it, academically qualified, up at the top tier institutions in the country about governance,
mhm,
because the opportunity in the deepened space in general, not just helium, is, hey, you've got a few hundred basically countries that have developed in the last 2 or 3 years, and those countries have a population of anywhere from hundreds to hundreds of thousands, and none of them really has governance expertise. And so
mhm.
it's always been like, cool, we'll just do, the one token, one vote thing. That doesn't work. It's like, what do you do? Well, fucking A, it's there's no perfect government in the world. And so it's pretty clear that humans haven't figured out like the exact way to do this. Like we figured out how to get the wheel to go round and round and roll down the road. Like the wheel's pretty damn good, but governance structures are really different and really depend on the project. So it's been kind of cool to watch what's going on with Helium, because I think they probably have the most resources and time and ability and understanding of how important it is, to do it. But it's certainly not the only one or the only way. So kind of cool to see it
Yeah,
rolling on down.
it's always fun to see these other projects tackle similar problems in very different ways too.
Yeah,
And it almost feels, I mean, it's foreign, right? Like I work in the helium space nonstop, and then I'll go talk to Demo or Anakoy or somebody like that. And they're like,
yep,
oh yeah, we do it very differently. It's like, wait,
yeah,
wait, what? Tell me about it.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. No, and I think one thing that we've seen talking to these academics is that a general, very rough consensus is that all these projects have to start as benevolent dictatorships. That's just how they have to start. Is you have to one group or one person, one small group of people saying like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. And the first really tricky decision is, when do you change that from the experts kind of who know what's going on and built project, to saying, okay, we're going to give a little bit of this to the community or a lot of it to the community, and how do we make sure that trust is, yeah, not
Yep.
not
Yep.
incorrectly given. So,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah. Corporate governance is another interesting model. And yeah, there's a bunch of sort of
yeah.
ways to cut that.
There's some super cool stuff. I've been, reading about this and economic stuff nonstop for the past couple of weeks. But I think one of the neat things was that in every effective governance group, it basically, all of those group sizes are 5 to 8 people. So,
Hmm.
less than five, usually no more than eight, will get you to a decision as efficiently as possible with enough different viewpoints. And anything bigger
Hmm.
than that just gets kind of drowned out. So,
That's just enough cooks in the kitchen then.
yeah. Yeah. And I think for those of us who are like entrepreneurs and like running our own ship, it's like, that's way too many. Get out of the way. I should be the only one. But if we're going to have a thing
Right.
that is run kind of by the people for the people, there's got to be more than one cook in the kitchen.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Good
it's
stuff.
going to keep evolving. It's going to be fun all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I had incorrectly identified JR as Rollinson. That is actually Gray Hat. So the Jewish
Ah,
cheater.
yep.
What's up, dog? And I don't know if your name is public, so we'll leave the JR to be a mystery. Let's talk about Wi-Fi hotspots. What's going on with
Yeah,
that, dude? Give me all the
just
inside dope. You know everything.
another boring week as it goes, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, so Nova Labs is driving a lot of the hardware development and um, infrastructure side of the mobile network. And then the Helium Foundation in this case is enabling the protocol and the onboarding of hotspots, and we do the wallet app and all sorts of stuff there.
Yep.
PR's welcome always, right? Uh, but yeah, we I guess we're really excited to see those launch. It's been a big rush to get all of the support for the Wi-Fi hotspots use a slightly different key, so there's some technical challenges and hurdles to make sure all of that stuff got supported and handled appropriately. But yeah, the Nova Labs team has been running hotspots in DevNet, and I think now in production
Hmm.
using this Wi-Fi offload. This is if you've sort of heard the marketing term, it's Passpoint. And so this is where your cell phone just uses Wi-Fi that is publicly available. This is like what's I think Starbucks and some of these others do, um, and it enables you to hop off the cell tower and onto that closer, cheaper, hopefully faster connectivity. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's I think all of the Helium Mobile subscribers at this point have been prompted to load a certificate on their phone that allows that Passpoint capability for that eSIM. And yeah, we're starting to see those roll out. The orders that I think the one little fun bit here is yes, they're only selling in Miami at a sort of one-to-one retail basis. But if you're a larger deployer, you can shoot an email over to Nova Labs, and in those, I think it's in the landing page. Uh, and if you've got like a dozen retail spots lined up, they will actually set you up there. Um, Co Wi-Fi, Cowfi,
Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi?
I don't know, Co
Oh,
Wi-Fi.
we're getting a couple folks coming in. What's up, Dennis? Fred
Yeah.
Carter.
Um, so anyway, I know there's a lot of eager folks out there to start setting these things up at some scale, and so it'll be really exciting to start seeing the cellular, like the mobile network, pick up sort of at a rate that we saw with LoRaWAN IoT hotspots. So that price point way lower than a CBRS gateway. Hopefully that makes it a little more accessible for folks to plug these things in. They've got power over Ethernet. It's like perfectly primed for
What did I
sort of
see? It was
any commercial.
249 or something?
Yeah, they're going, yeah, 249.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I
And
should probably
so,
put one up
yeah,
at Paleo Treats. I know the Bobcat, the bobber that I've got there, seems to be doing LoRaWAN only and nothing to do with 5G. At least it's not earning any mobile tokens. So,
mm,
yeah,
might have a SAS issue there.
probably that's
That's
like,
one of the other challenges with CBRS, right? There's
yeah,
all of this licensing that's attached to it,
yep,
and that all sheds away with Wi-Fi. So it'll hopefully be a bit more of that seamless experience that we're used to with LoRaWAN.
yeah. Oh, and the handoffs are working better. This is good because when I'd fiddled with the handoffs with, I think you got me an eSIM at one point, Joey. This was just like a
Oh yeah,
really short test thing. Is it
yep,
was cool, but the handoffs were super janky.
yeah,
I was like dropping calls all week and finally was like, all right, I can't do this shit. But it's
yeah.
cool to hear that the handoffs are way better than CBRS.
Yeah, I know Nova Labs is continuing to invest on the CBRS side. Like it still fits a niche part of building a wireless network that's
Yep.
going to be important for them.
Yep.
And so making sure those handoffs get smoother is in there. But yeah, the Passpoint handoff is basically invisible. The cell phones have gotten just so good at handling that stuff now.
It's pretty rad. I mean, it's just incredible to think about all the technology that we're living through that we kind of take for granted. It's like, oh, this is exciting. It's like, holy shit, my dad is just here and he's 79 or something. And just watching him maneuver through technology and thinking he grew up on a farm in Iowa in the early or late 40s. Like what he saw growing up and being, where I am my age now, is he was in the 60s, is just like, holy shit, the world is changing really fast. And what
Yeah.
we're seeing and what our parents saw I guess some of our children, certainly not mine, because I don't have any. We'll see. Is fucking crazy.
Was he a farmer?
He grew up on a farm and then I think moved off in his teens. I think his dad is kicking the shit out of him, so he got sent off to live with an uncle, and then
Uh,
yeah, got
I
off the
mean,
farm. But he'll still,
it,
yeah,
farmers tend to navigate technology like no other. Like, you know, working on a farm is working on every piece of something. So
it's
it's
incredible. I know when I went
yeah,
up with Nick Huff over at Uplink Engine, I went up to visit him in Boise, Idaho. We drove out to one of the farms that he put a hotspot on, and I had the same, embarrassingly kind of ignorant view of farmers that I think a lot of people do. It's like, oh, they just know how to grow corn. They don't know shit about technology. And the farmer had, I think, two master's degrees in electrical engineering and fucking something else, math or
yeah,
physics or something. Like
yeah,
that dude knew more about the world in his, in his right giant fucking forearm than I've got in my whole body. It was really eye opening. It's like, oh yeah, all they do is work with technology all day, and they're
yeah.
not by a long shot
No,
too behind or anything.
they'll pick up LoRaWAN faster than you realize. Like you used to having these conversations of like, well, it's like Wi-Fi, but it's not, and they're like LoRaWAN. Tell me about it. Why is it better? And it's like, oh yeah, we're already in the like details now. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a cool thing to see. It's always nice to see that I'm still pretty ignorant about the world. It means there's a lot left to explore.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's see. I thought we had some bombshell news with Nebra onboards going to zero, but they brought them back up. I think on Dune they're still showing a zero, but they got them back up. So my bombshell kind of fizzled there.
Oh, all good. Yeah, that Dune dashboard. I want to look into it. I think this. I'll probably find the same solution or same answer that whoever initially built it found. But on the charts that you're looking at, probably it
Mhm.
doesn't show all of the recent transactions, but there is a little table down. If you scroll down to the bottom,
Mm,
there's a table that actually shows the transactions that have happened. So yeah, there you go, Nebra.
okay, never right at the top.
Um,
Cool.
Yep. So this is something that Helium Foundation is, trying to build some better process around to like make sure, like just keep makers in line.
Yeah,
And it's easier to think about some of these things on a forward moving basis, but it's a lot more challenging to go back and say like, how do we make sure this maker puts all of their funds in? Because you don't want to pull their maker key because now everyone who bought one of those hotspots can't onboard it. Like there's definitely little gotchas in there.
yeah.
But yeah, good to see Nebra hopped on that. It took a couple of days, which we don't love to see because that's a rough user experience for folks in the interim. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Although,
we're gonna.
man, Nebra has been, at different times kind of the not the evil act, but like a really terrible experience and then a really great experience, like really good for the network and really bad for the network. It's been amazing to see that kind of go over and to rewind the clock when they first came out with their outdoor hotspot, the one with all the aluminum ribs on it. People were
Mhm.
crazy about that thing. They couldn't buy enough of them. And then it
Oh
came
yeah.
out. I remember all the Nebras, like the hotspot connections were broken or fucked, and Neil put a ton of time into pointing that out. And so they were kind of at the bottom. And then they came back and they're like, yeah, no, we're going to support the network. And Aaron showed up at every event and was like, yeah,
Hmm.
if you want to yell at me, come up and yell it to me to my face. I'll see what I can do to help you. So,
Yeah. No, it's confusing to say the least, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it goes back and forth.
the
But I
good and
think
bad, but yeah.
I mean, it's just it's a business like any other, and you got your high points and low points, and times when you're really good and times when you're not so good. So
Yeah.
it's part of life, right?
Yeah. All in all, like it's great to see that team being a sort of constant participant in the code base. Like Aaron himself goes and like fixes issues in Gateway RS and documentation and also yeah. So yeah, I see that. I really appreciate all of that. It doesn't usually make it to the broader community, unfortunately, but
No,
those
huh?
things
Maybe we should do like
can't go unnoticed.
a this week's highlight, and we'll start putting his face just up front and center.
There we go. Yeah, like just a it's a PR campaign to
Yeah,
improve
like
his
Helium
image.
Heroes this week or something.
Yeah, but
Yep.
yeah,
Cool.
that
What else? I got sensors I still have to get out there and deploy. I just been behind on that. I talked to Weather XM, obviously, they're doing some helium stuff. I got to get one of their sensors moved from one paragliding spot to another.
Mhm.
So that's on my list of things to do. And now that the place that I've got actually amateur jade hair, that trail is closed in August because it's so hot. And then I just let September get away from me. So now it's getting like nice enough weather where I think I'll hike out a weather station and put it up there. And yeah,
Cool. I may. I just found some website that shows flights. Anyway, flying to San Diego is like $50 if you can
come on
find the
down,
right
dog.
flight. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'll have to figure something out.
yeah. If
I'm
you
going to Tokyo next week, so it's not going to be next week, but
that's right. It's is it Lorwan Live? Is that what it is?
it is. So yeah, you
Okay,
won't see me next week because it'll probably be like 2 a.m. or something like that.
okay, fair.
But uh, yeah, Lorwyn Live, giving a presentation in conjunction with Rack Wireless, Jose over there. And then we've got a bunch of meetings lined up to sort of chat with anyone we can and, get to better know the APAC region and, helium opportunities out there. Um, so it should be a good time.
Yeah, yeah. Joe, do you think that there are people in Lorwan who still don't know about helium or are deeply suspicious of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those are
Okay.
my favorite conversations, frankly. So,
Oh, really?
like, yeah,
If
I
they don't
like
know about it, it's one thing. If they're suspicious of it, it's like, it's cryptocurrency. I'm not touching that. How do you handle that?
it, that you have to split the cryptocurrency story a little bit from the network.
Mm,
And if you can say, like, look, the cryptocurrency is the incentive mechanism for people to stand all these things up, and it, is proven to work. And, we're running some 100,000 gateways or whatever today. Um, that is a massive opportunity for any one of these folks. And that's a quote from like Dave Shendel from Senate. He's like, I'd be an idiot to not use this thing, right?
yeah.
Um, and
It's
if
three hundred and
you,
fifty thousand, right? It's not 100,000.
oh, yeah, so yeah,
I think
I don't even look at the, yeah, but it's still a great number, right?
playing it safe. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Um, the that typically where that conversation goes from, like, once you've sort of talked about the incentive mechanism piece of it, is like, did you guys like just make up some shitty, you know, rough implementation of LoRaWAN? And it's like, oh no, we can do passive roaming and we follow this spec, and you can plug your thing in here and there and whatever, and you're like, oh, this actually works the way I would expect it to. Like, you actually did follow the rules and you did sort of build the thing that in a way that it can be of use and of scale, and you're actually prioritized that. And that's, oh yeah, FEMA, yeah, good
I
good
didn't
call
know that.
out. All our
There's
phones are going to go off at like 2:20 today or something like that.
oh,
I think
okay.
that's Eastern time though,
Okay.
so
I didn't know
might
about that. All right. I didn't know if
might
that
be in a
was
couple of
relevant to
minutes.
this lore one thing. All right.
No, no, totally, total tangent. But yeah, again, it's one of those things that's going to separate, I think, a lot of deep end projects. Is, can you go and have a conversation with the commercial, establishment, and do they look at your project of like, oh, they just hooked on to our Bluetooth or LoRaWAN or cellular or whatever branding
Yep.
and are shilling something that's like completely a farce? Or
Yep.
did they actually spend the time to build that infrastructure and like make something of true utility?
Yeah.
And so it always, comes back to that usage side. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I see people's mood change very, very quickly when you ask some technical question and it's like, oh yeah, I actually have the answer you were looking for there. Um,
It's like
and
net
and
ID
then
31. Yo, I can bring it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like, I heard you guys made up a net ID or something, and it's like, yes, we did. That was a bad call, and now we actually have an official net ID. And they're like, great, that's all I needed to hear.
31C or
So,
whatever it is. Yeah. 3C, whatever it is. Yeah.
zero three C, yeah,
3C. Yeah. Yeah. I gotta get my gang signs right. My
right,
healing
right.
gang sign. Let's see. Network bits. Did you miss the Crank and XNet discussion? Nope, you didn't. There was no discussion. Yeah. So the LoRaWAN stuff. I mean, I think the interesting thing for me is I don't think we've hit on what you use a global LoRaWAN for yet, right? It's
Totally.
just like the tracking thing, maybe, but I still have questions like how do you? I think I still got that sticker around here somewhere, the rack sticker, not the rack sticker, the whatever the other one was. Like it's
Yep.
pretty cool,
Yeah.
but how many times do you send a cardboard box, right? You send it like usually one time. And so like, yeah, we haven't figured out what to use the thing for. Are
Yeah.
you seeing
I mean,
anything that you're psyched on?
is demo going to be the use case, right? Like, who knows?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Uh, it's a, it's like a really great thing, and I've wanted to see an ODB2 reader that works over LoRaWAN and gives me, a lifetime of stats on my vehicle. That's a fantastic use case, but it's one of an endless number of use cases that you can use a network like this for. So, in a certain respect, the answer is there is no one use case. Like it is there for a lot of purposes.
Yeah. It might be
You
just that
could
it's
say
super
that,
flexible.
yeah, like cellular, mobile, the probably the main use case is selling very expensive cellular plans to you and me, right? Um, but there are other use
Nice.
cases
Nice. Just like little
in
hook there, Joey.
IoT. Yeah. Oh, like now we know, right? Like
Yeah.
we've seen under the rug a little bit of what
Yeah.
this thing does.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of other things. Like you can use it for tracking, trail cams, like all that other kind of stuff. And those nobody at one of those companies is ever going to tell you like, oh yeah, trail cams are going to be our next $1 billion business.
Right.
Um, but it's there and it's a piece of that story, and it helps move the gears for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm curious about where the thing goes. As I was walking around with my dad this last week, he's kind of trying to wrap his head around what you could do with it, and it seems like a lot of
Hmm.
the business cases end up being um, much more for businesses, not for individuals. So it's a
Yeah.
fun thing to fuck around with as an individual, but for business, you really have to put some resources into it to kind of make it worth it. If you're going to put in these parking sensors, I think the cheapest parking sensor I found anywhere was, I think it was right around $200. Might have been a little bit
Hmm.
less, but even if you get them down to 70 or 100, to line an avenue with $100 sensors in every parking spot, you're looking at 10 grand, 20 grand. So
Yeah.
that's just for hardware. That's not labor. That's not kind of building the infrastructure behind it to understand the data. So it's
Right.
definitely like a
Well,
business thing, not a personal thing.
and I think it's worth noting too, like Demo's device, they built from the ground up. Like I was watching their entire product development cycle for the
Just
macaroon.
the macaron. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and that probably was that like that's an expensive undertaking. Like they had engineers and folks working on that, and that's where you start to see those like $200 sensor price points and all of that. And it's really exciting to see Demo look a little bit past the onesie twosie stuff and say like we're going to sell 25,000 of these things, we're going to sell 100,000 of these things,
Yeah.
and look at that long-term picture a little bit more, which is hard to do when you're in the B2B space because like you're like, just give me that one client, right? Let me fill a parking lot with these sensors and I'll retire. um, but yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
it's a different frame of thinking. Like, yeah,
yeah. Well, and in a lot of these, I think it's also a re-understanding or an exploration of how much value you can extract out of the information you get. And I think
yes,
that's something that stops or hinders a lot of people is that you think about parking sensors like, okay, cool, I can tell if a car is there or not. And then you think a little bit more like, okay, this is one of the questions my dad asked. He's like, why don't you just put these up and down the main street, Adams Ave, which is like our little main street, USA, and then sell that information to the city so that they can call parking meters to come there and ticket people when they're over time, or ideally, in his world, because he's funny like this, he's like just immediately issue them a ticket. And I think we've talked
hmm,
about this before. It's like, I don't really know if I want like the full network state coming down on my parking
I
meters.
know you're there 45 seconds too long, and you're like,
Yeah,
ah,
there's $50, but at the same
run,
time, like the laws are the
yeah,
laws, and maybe that's not a terrible thing. Um,
yeah,
and I've been hit with it both ways. Fuck, I parked at this one spot in this. As I was in San Diego, you'll park at a spot and then you got to walk halfway down a block to put your credit card in to buy the little paper slip to go back and put in your car.
hmm,
As I'm going down to buy the paper slip, the parking guy comes along and writes me a ticket. And I
ah,
was like, dude, you see me coming back. He's like, I didn't see you. And it was like a $70 ticket. And you're like, motherfucker. That would have been
yeah,
super nice to have, some kind of automated piece where it's like, yeah, you get a minute free
yeah,
or
you just
something.
got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So
that's rough.
yeah.
Yeah, those are, I mean, that's the good side to look at something like that is like, oh, don't write them the ticket yet because they just got here or whatever. But yeah, the automated ticket writing is a little scary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But maybe that's the way to go. Let's see. Sean, is that Sean from XNet? Oh, we got the XNet crew coming in. God bless them. All right. Well, I'm sure they have some super hard questions. Where can we find Helium Mobile subscriber count? Are there any public dashboards? I actually don't know the question or the
So
answer
I
to this.
think, um, and I don't know the exact answer to this, but each Helium Mobile subscriber has a sort of on-chain representation through a subscriber NFT. And I don't know if it's entirely one-to-one
Mm,
NFT to subscriber, but
okay.
should be able to assemble some sort of Dune query to track that. The other thing to look at is mobile mapping rewards and how those get divided up over time.
Yeah.
Because there is a fixed pool, you should be able to, and that number go down each month as more subscribers come on
Cool.
and participate in mapping. Um, you should be
Okay.
able to sort of divide that out. But yeah, I don't have an exact like assembled dashboard
Okay.
that I could
So,
point
but it's
to.
fucking math. I think that's the one crazy thing I've seen is that if you speak the language of math, this whole world is a lot easier to understand. Like that's
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I've been thinking lately, like shit, I just need to go find a local university math class and get beyond the basic pluses and minuses that I'm competent
Chat
at.
GPT, it's figuring it out for you. Like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know
Uh,
enough to make sure it makes sense. So, yeah. But
yeah, well,
yeah,
I mean,
sorry,
and the good.
on the Helium Mobile thing, I'm so focused on LoRaWAN. So I'm just as much of a spectator as most other folks there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, me too. So in the work that Goldhawks does for Nova and the contract we have with them, Max does all of that stuff.
Mhm.
I think, in fact, I get on the calls and Boris is like, "Who is that guy and what is he doing here?" So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely more questions for Max. Cool. Anything else going on in Helium Land? I'm trying to think like all the crazy sensor stuff. I haven't been touching a lot of it lately. Um,
Yeah. I mean, we've
but yeah.
had some really exciting stuff that's in the works. Like there, there's an email that came through. I think you saw just a guy was trying to build data only hotspots in a warehouse, and he spoke these lines that like
Oh, that's
I
right.
go
Yeah,
on
yeah.
and
You
on
stepped
about,
in on
but he's
this. Yeah.
like,
What? So what happened with that?
I think he's powering through it, but this story of like I have a warehouse, I have sensors in that warehouse, I need
Yep.
to deploy these data only gateways so I can have connectivity there. And
Yep.
that's usually where you start to see a split of like, do they go TTN? Do they go private network? Do they go Helium? Like whatever. But the opportunity there is that now you've deployed on Helium, you get the redundancy. And he said that. He's like, I need to like, oh God, this thing tracks my thumbs. Um,
Huh.
I don't know
Does
what
it track my thumbs?
I don't. I think it's.
Is it your computer? Badass. You got a
I think
fucking
it's.
thumb
I think
computer.
it's my computer. Is it this one?
There
Yeah,
you
it's
go.
that one for sure. All right, I'm turning that off. Every time I show my thumbs, it's starting to grab something from me. Um, so distracting. Uh, but
Let's see.
the
So actually, let's start at the beginning on this one. So Joey, this guy had reached out to me and said like, "Hey, I'm using the MetSci dashboard, and I
mm,
don't understand this part of it, and I need help." And I had gone into the GK server where we've got I think we have a not a Mediocentric, but a ChirpStack channel. Asked a question about it, basically copy and pasted his question in there. And I think you were like, "Hey, I'm happy to talk about that." I didn't realize that what he was asking about was some kind of bigger issue. And then I connected you guys on email, and then I watched that email thread just go ding 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 as you went back and forth and like solved his problem. So there's like at least two parts of it. One of it was super cool to see the technical director for Helium Foundation like solving someone's problem, and the other thing that was cool was like the solution itself.
yeah,
So
I mean the questions came in at a really good time. I had just kind of done a pretty big turn on documentation for data only hotspots. And that's a little bit blocked on launch because you can't quite assert the location of a data only hotspot yet. We're working on that. Once that's done, we can launch everything there. Um, but you can make a data only hotspot work without a location assert. So he's going to power through that, and I was able to point him in the right direction, like compile this code. Don't use the release yet because it's not ready. Um, So he kind of got all the inside pointers to like put the pieces together. I think he's
Yep.
working through that. But yeah, this whole story of like the whole reason why he's building data only hotspots perfectly matches this big macro network of what Helium is. And it's like when this device leaves my warehouse, it needs to keep working. And you
Yeah.
can't do that with private LoRaWAN, right? Unless you go deploy your entire route that you know those things are going to end up on.
Yeah.
Um, and so the roaming story there, or just the straight conversion of the gateways that he's already running, is really cool. And yeah, I think he was using some rack gateways that of their like of a different grade than what
Yeah.
the hotspots normally are. So
That's
yeah.
pretty right. Hey, I'll betray my ignorance on this one. The last time I looked, and this is now 2 or 3 months ago, you couldn't buy DC with HNT directly. You could only buy it with dollars. Do you know if that's changed? I just haven't paid attention. I've been buying it with a card. So I'll be damned if I'm going to
That
spend my
is
HNT on anything.
yeah. So that was never true.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So you could do HNT if you want. This is for running an OUI.
yeah. What was it? It was. I think people. I'm trying to think. I think it was Nos Master who had been the most strident about it. But it was something that you could. So I could. It must have been for running an OUI. I think, because I could trade HNT for DC in my wallet, but then because you can't transfer DC, as far as I know, you couldn't send that DC to the OUI to pay for whatever it is that you needed to pay for. I think that was the gist of the argument. But it sounds like
I've
maybe
got a
that's been fixed.
document that perfectly explains this for you that I have not published yet. I wrote it like 2 nights ago.
Oh,
So
badass. Cool.
yeah. Um, Basically, what happens, you can create that data credit pool in your wallet, like your own personal one. And then what data credits allow is a one-time delegation. And so you can take those data credits and delegate them to the escrow account associated with your OUI. And you can do that in the Helium wallet app. You kind of need to know the right steps.
Okay.
You can also use the Sphere data credit portal, which
Yep.
has interface for credit cards and also for using HMT. Um, but yeah, I'll get into that. That's not for this call. Just
Okay. Cool. That's
suffice to
good.
say
It's
it
good to
works.
hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good to hear that it's on the docket. Jim
Yeah.
Leacone, Solar Hive in the chat. I don't know what Solar Hive is, but welcome, Jim. Fucking hey, buddy.
Welcome, Jim. Yeah.
I banned Network Bits. He was just being a jackwagon. I think in general on this thing, we are just going to only do rad shit on this show. And if you're being a jackass, then you get the fucking boot. So that's the deal.
Wow, I missed out on that. Wasn't watching the chat.
You didn't miss. I can't see him this much. He was super excited about fries and XNet and NFTs and uh,
Mm,
yeah,
okay.
whatever.
Yeah. Can't keep
What do you
up
do?
with all of them.
So, yeah.
Cool, Nick.
All right, buddy. Well, I think we can probably wrap that sucker with 8 minutes to go. I think we're good there. But good to see you. I guess we'll talk about transferring DCs or whatever it is. When are you going to publish this document?
I'll send you a staging link.
This mysterious
I'll
document.
I'll have the document. I want to get the documentation done before I go to Tokyo, so it's out there.
Okay.
But it's already on GitHub, and then everything that we publish to GitHub gets a staging link, so we can review and share it with folks. So I'll shoot that over.
All right. Badass, dog. Fucking A. Good to see you.
Cool.
Thanks for coming on. And we won't see you next week because you'll be in Tokyo. But
Yep.
have a good time in Japan.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
It'll be a good time.
Leats.
Later.